Good morning, everyone. I'm Tom with CertifID. We have a very special guest, Melissa. I'll introduce her in just a second. We'll let some folks run through here. Everyone is rolling in. If you have questions or you have any issues, please throw those in the Q&A. I'm actually putting that on another side of my screen right now. All right, so while everybody's pouring in, I want to get started. For those of you that I have not met before, I'm Tom. I'm one of the co-founders of CertifID wire fraud prevention solution that is now essentially the industry standard nationally. And I'm a recovering attorney by trade. I'm also a large title agency owner. And we bring the To Catch a Fraudster series every single month to really profile and highlight the trends that we're seeing kind of in market. We have just a fascinating guest and story to share with you today. And just make sure you're tuning in every month. So we're going to have some other very special guests over the next couple months from the industry. Next month, we'll be talking about like information security and how the landscape of like hardware, software, people, process can help lower security instances. We'll be touching on the intersection of that regarding wire fraud. And we're trying to bring to you again, just the 35 or 40 minutes that we spend every month is really meant to level us all up as industry partners for our real estate agents, for our attorneys, for our buyers and sellers and developers and builders to be the most secure version of ourselves that we can be. So with that, a couple things. If you have a question, please put them in the chat panel. And don't forget to fill out the survey at the end. I look at those results along with the broader team at CertifID to make sure that we're providing, like I say, as most relevant content as possible. So without further ado, we got a ton of ground to cover. I want to introduce Melissa to you. So Melissa is president and CEO of Landtitle Texas. She's a member of the TLTA in McAllen, Texas. And she has a very interesting story. She's been in the industry for quite a while. And I can't even say this, Melissa, but 4-time wire fraud victim in a single 30-day rolling period. And that really piqued our interest. Melissa, thank you for joining. And if you want to backfill any about your background before we jump right into fraud one, we'll call it the first vector. I can't thank you enough. And I know I speak for everyone giving us the gift of your time today to talk through what happened.
Thanks. So I've got a title agency in Texas, and I'm down in corporate office in South Texas and all of Houston major metro markets. I've been in the business almost 30 years now. And I was sharing my story with the folks over at CertifID because I feel we got duped, and I want to make sure that those of our peers in our industry don't suffer the same. So we had 4 separate instances, each very different, but all dealing with wire fraud, and it all occurred within a 30-day period. Fortunately, we didn't suffer a significant financial loss, but the parties on the outside who weren't as lucky because they were actually duped. And there's several things that, in hindsight, looking through this, I'd like to share with you all to look out for, because I feel like there's a few things my team could have noticed or done a little differently, where we could have stopped this fraudster in their tracks before they were successful in getting our money or our clients' money.
No, and Melissa, I can't thank you enough for the humility and the courage to share your story. We need more stories like this. I'm a wire fraud victim. We've talked a few times leading up to this. So I thank you for that. And I know I speak for everyone because it's not hard to talk about. You can Monday morning quarterback a game and look back and say, well, was this or that? But when it's coming in real time, it's hard, right? It's hard to detect. And with social media and the things that we're going to talk about, you don't know it's occurring until after the incident is exposed. It's not like you're in the middle of it in real time. And you, at least in a lot of ways, it's like, I didn't make a bad call in real time. I would have to have changed things further upstream to have prevented it. So with that, I'm going to attempt to share my screen. And then I'm going to confirm from you, Melissa, can you see? Look at that.
Somebody's been on my Facebook.
Love it. All right. Can you see full screen here, Melissa? And can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, perfect. Let's roll.
All right.
Number one, and just walk us through high level, and then we're going to dive into the email. So what happened in this particular fraud incident?
So let me preface this by saying that this occurred in a period over 4 days consistent communication. Even though money was released from my office after 24 hours, the fraudster, because they had not received the funds, continued to reach out to us. So this went on for a while, start to finish, from the beginning, from the inception of the spoofed or copied domain and emails to the time it was discovered was 5 business days. We're talking Monday to Friday morning.
Okay.
Okay.
And Melissa, the fraud itself was money was sent to you as the lender sent money to you, just to frame it really high level.
Okay.
The mortgage company was spoofed for return of those mortgage proceeds back to the mortgage lender, right?
Yeah. And this is something we in our industry, doesn't happen very often, where we get to a transaction and we get to the point where the lender releases funds to us because presumably we're ready to close. This is such a small percentage of instances that occur on a day-to-day business in our industry where we have to return lender funds for a transaction that didn't happen, either didn't happen at all or didn't happen on time and was going to happen again later, which is what this one was. We don't see that very often, but when we do, it's going to be big money. It's not going to be the $1,000 return of earnest money. It's going to be significant money. This one was $225,000, give or take. And so it's real money. We don't think of in my mind, in hindsight, we really don't focus on one of our lender partners being someone that we would even consider having any risk in communicating wire instructions on for this sort of thing. Well, let me tell you, it is a risk and it's a big one. And don't think for a moment that you can overlook any inconsistency ever, no matter where it is, because it's going to be the smallest thing, as you'll see as we break this process down, that these fraudsters are becoming more and more sophisticated. They're taking the time to get into our process, learn our dialogue, intercept the emails from the real people and just copy and paste them. So it's like we're talking to somebody in our business.
Well, when this was presented to me from my team, I thought, no, you must have the details wrong. Like, they're not sophisticated enough to understand the heavily nuanced protocol to return a lender wire. You'd think that would just fall outside of what I'd call domain expertise or scope. And then when we connected for the first time, I had the same thing. As a title agency owner, I'm like, you can't let a single transfer go by or make an assumption that because this is a lender, that it's not at risk. It's incredible the domain expertise that this shows us in the industry of what they've learned. It's like there's just no safe zone anymore. All right, so you mentioned a week, right? So
Right.
and we're going to get into the communications. I want to
So-
voice. Go ahead. Yep.
So let's start with Monday. So we go the week prior to May 9th. We're working on a transaction as normal. We do quite a bit of construction work in my shop. Lender's ready to close. They have a clear to close. Builder says, you know what? I didn't get my certificate of occupancy like I planned to, and it's not going to happen. So let's reschedule the closing. Give me another week. I failed an inspection. So that closing was supposed to have occurred the Friday before on May 6th. Lender had sent their funds because we were presumably ready. On Monday, the lender says, builder said they can't close. We need to return our funds. So the dialogue goes on Monday with the closer at the lender's office, the loan officer, the processor, all having emails with the same domain name of the lender, and the title company closer. Dialogue's going back and forth. We need to make sure to get the wire back. Give me a minute. I'll send you wiring instructions. Keep in mind, if we're going to try to reschedule this closing for tomorrow or Wednesday, we need to make sure we have that wire back. My closer says, yeah, okay, got it, no problem. So after lunch, my closer receives an email that says, here are the wiring instructions. Okay, well, it was missing an address. Monday afternoon, later throughout the day, my closer receives another email. Hey, did you receive my email? I need those funds back. Well, Tuesday comes around. My closer says, you know, I need to verify an address. I called you and I left you a message because I need to get the address. I need to make sure the address is correct. So then, and this is all going through via email after the closer called and left a voicemail for the last known number she had for the closer at the lender's office, because the signature block on the email she's currently communicating with had no phone numbers anymore. So she went back to a known phone number, left a voicemail, but, and this is important, left a message for the closer, but subsequently sent an email saying, hey, I left you a message. I need the address to the bank and I need to verify instructions. Okay, so we're still on Tuesday, get an email back, again, not knowing that she's not communicating with the person she thinks she's communicating with, but the emails from the person she thinks she's communicating with are going to the fraudster, and the fraudster is taking that information, interpreting it, because presumably we call, leave a voicemail for the closer. Closer gets the voicemail. The closer doesn't want to pick up the phone because she's too busy. So closer responds with an email that's intercepted. Okay, so my closer gets a phone call at our office from a restricted number. Hi, this is Rachel over at ABC Lending. I got your email. You need to verify my instructions. I sent you the email with the address. Well, the voice sounded a little strange. The closer, although, another key point, although my closer has a long-standing relationship with this lender and this particular closer, they've never spoken on the phone. They've never spoken on the phone. So in hindsight, you know, they had a strange accent. I couldn't place it. But, you know, again, why were we thinking that there was a possibility of anything strange? Wiring instructions are verified, $225,000 wire is sent. confirmation received from our bank. My closer emails a confirmation to the fraudster, not knowing it's the fraudster, saying, hey, I've returned your money. Wednesday, fraudster says, what's going on? I don't have the money yet. I need to make sure. Remember, we can't release the new money, and we can't reschedule the buyer for closing until we get confirmation of these funds. It is imperative that you send us this wire confirmation. And my closer says, what are you talking about? I sent it to you yesterday. Here it is again. Well, we don't have the money. We need to have it. We've got a schedule. And now we see an email where it appears that the buyer is copied on that email. And the lender says, hey, buyer, you need to push your title company because they're not sending us the money and we can't reschedule you and you could lose your lock and we need to get you scheduled. And again, my closer is sitting there saying, hey, I sent it to you. Maybe your bank just hasn't posted it yet. All right. So Thursday, still going back and forth, we haven't received the money. Friday morning, this is where I get involved. Because all through this time, it still seems like normal transaction. We sent the money back. It's not unlike a warehouse bank not to advise their lender that the money just hasn't been posted back to the warehouse line yet. We know that's a process. So no concern yet. Friday morning, I get an email, me personally, from the contacts over at this lender, everyone copied on the email saying, hey, what's going on? We've been emailing your closer since Monday, and we have no response. Well, at this point, it's not only regarding the transaction with the fraud, another transaction is also happening at the same time, completely different buyer, regular deal, but there were apparently some rules put in place that prohibited any emails from the real lender getting through to my closer and vice versa. Where were those rules placed? We don't know. We don't find them in our email server. The lender wouldn't admit or confirm that it was in theirs. So who knows? But it was the emails going back and forth weren't happening. So I have access to my entire team's email through our Microsoft 365. So I go into my closer's email, quickly search this name, and I come up with several emails throughout the week. So I'm communicating with these ladies saying, hey, what are y'all talking about? We sent you the money. We sent you the confirmation. We don't have it. Well, here's the email where I sent it, where you sent it to us and where we sent it to you. They said, what? What's BB&T Bank? And let me tell you something. If you bank at BB&T, and I hope I can say this, but of 90% of the purported scams run through BB&T Bank. Why? I don't know. But BB&T Bank is the bank that many of these fraudsters have access to either create accounts under fictitious, under names that aren't theirs, or the bank has a very, 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 very loose wire process where they don't require account name to match account number. I don't know. But that's a discussion for another day. But we discovered that when I sent this over, they came back and said, no, those weren't the instructions we sent. These are the instructions we sent. Same exact form, logo and all. The only difference was the bank name, address, and account number. The beneficiary account number was still the warehouse bank for the lender. Completely different bank. And in fact, the logo we now know, but didn't catch then, the logo on the letter with the wiring instructions was actually the logo of the correct bank and not the BB&T Bank. Okay. So then we continue our dialogue on Friday morning, and I'm just perplexed. I can't figure out why these people are just, being, in my opinion, irrational, because we sent them the money. The problem must be on their end. And they must have, they must have been confused on what bank they sent it to. Well, it wasn't until a dozen email exchanges that I saw it. I saw the letter. I saw the S, the additional letter in the domain name of the bank for all of the parties in the email chain that we'd been communicating with. We'd been duped. And it was that simple. Even after we knew there was a problem, even after we were looking for a problem, even after all these things in a dozen emails, and I knew I was looking for something, I didn't see it. So you can only imagine how it would so easily get past someone on just a normal day-to-day when you're not looking for something. When you're looking for it, and I couldn't find it for 2 hours and a dozen emails, this just reinforces what we're saying about how carefully we have to look at any email exchange with delicate information on just a day-to-day, because when you're not looking for it, it's going to get right past you. So that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, I've got some questions, and I'll go through the emails somewhat quickly so we can go on to the next one. But thank you, and I appreciate the texture of just being vulnerable to say, look, I looked at it for several hours, and it was hard to see. It was really, and I'll show you the emails in just a second. My question, let's roll back to point of beginning. Was there actually a legitimate request from the legitimate lender to return the funds, or was that a ruse?
There was, and there was a legitimate request about the time that the domain name was created that Monday.
Right.
And the email was intercepted from the lender. The form was intercepted, manipulated, and resent to us.
And then sent to you. Yeah. So I know these are very hard to prove, but someone was compromised. You had your system analyzed and said, look, I don't have forwarding rules. I don't have auto delete rules.
Correct.
It was likely on the other side.
Correct.
Okay. Let's look at, so the real communication was my CC mortgage. I need to recall the wire. I've not heard back on this loan. This is a legitimate communication to you.
And notice there's 3 people from the mortgage company on this email.
Right. Yeah. This was interesting. You're right. There are 3 people. You're exactly right. And then we move.
And then notice there is a phone number. You see under where it says closer, where it's got the D.
Right.
Notice that too, because that was a phone number.
Yep.
That phone number existed. This is the correct, and just look at the signature block. Look at the structure on it. This is a legit email at 11:32 a.m. The domain was created, I think we were told, Monday. And I think the first email that we received from the fraudster
was 432. So now you have not my CC mortgage, my CCS. I agree with you. What's interesting is they impersonated not only the primary closer, but the 2 people that were CC'd on it. So they tried to replicate, right, as clear as possible.
Look at the font. Look at the font on their email. And it matches the one before.
Yep.
And now look at where it has the email and the phone number are removed from the signature block.
Yep. You're exactly
At
right.
first glance, you know, unless you're looking for it, you're not going to see it. And even when I was looking for it, I didn't see it.
See, what I find interesting as I read this, so you have subject line here, and guys, all of this matters. You might think, wow, why are they spending time on this? This is the stuff that you really try to analyze after. Look at the subject line. Regarding red, meaning this must be.
That's the
red
borrower's
hot.
name.
Oh,
The
red, okay.
borrower's last name was Red.
Okay, so red, here's the address, closing Friday. Look at the subject line after. So they added urgent return wire red. So they added that, which normally if you did a reply all, that wouldn't be added. They added that to highlight the fact that, hey, here are the wiring instructions. It's a nuance to Melissa's point. The number is dropped off. Pretty important nuance, but you can see here, return wiring instructions attached. Please provide, please provide wiring instructions. Working on sending out the wire comes from Landtitle. Landtitle, I'm not in that office. You guys get the wire back on this one yesterday. We still do not have the CO and need the wire back.
Yeah, and so this one's coming to me, and I'm in Houston, or I was in Houston that day. I wasn't in that particular branch. And so I'm asking my closer, hey, what's up? I'm not in that office today.
But that's coming from a legitimate mortgage company. So we're back to a legitimate mortgage company email on Tuesday after the fraudster has impersonated
and so
them. Right.
Notice this, and this is where the rule comes in. So I respond to her at 9:40 on the real lender chain, and her response goes to, if you'll go back to that 3, her response where she says, I'm working on sending out the wire, goes to the fraudster, because now that rule is in effect.
Yep. I'm tracking you. If you guys have questions, put it in the Q&A panel.
I've got one I can answer very quickly. Yes. 2 weeks later, I did receive, by the grace of God, $225,000 back into my account.
Yep. And then you can see here, once the wire's out, please reply. We can get everything scheduled. So this is, again, just the curation of, but look at the language. I mean, it really is good language. We've highlighted on kindly and lowercase I and just some things that please reply with times available to close on Friday so we can get everyone scheduled and make sure this closes and funds on Friday. Thank you. What's wrong with that email, guys? I mean, I challenge anyone to throw in the chat, what is wrong with that email coming into a closer, trying to reschedule a closing on a construction deal where the C of O is just delayed a few days, right? When she's saying rule, this is an email from Brenda coming in, it's an email rule, it's a setting. So if they have access to, when the fraudster gains access to someone's email account, then they set up rules, forwarding rules, auto delete rules, redirection rules, and they can set a rule that says, hey, anything coming from Landtitle Texas to my CC mortgage gets redirected to my CCS mortgage. So the real mortgage company never sees the communication and vice versa. So they're sitting there and they're filtering out these communications. They grab a legitimate communication, they doctor it up, and then they send it back to the right party. That's what we're talking about with rules.
And now, in my opinion, and I'm not computer savvy, I'm not tech savvy, I'm not software savvy, but in my opinion, it makes logical sense that if someone set a rule on a domain that was copied, spoofed, whatever the correct term is, that in order to make that happen, that rule would have to have been set in that domain, in the copied one, because it's going in and out of there, and everything on my side was still coming in and out.
Correct. I would agree with that. this isn't happenstance. They were sitting in someone's email account. And the other thing that's interesting is if someone else is being spoofed or if you're being spoofed, typically you haven't been hacked, but now they're using, I would argue, the compromised email to create the spoofing emails much more believable, because the domain, to your point, was registered just a couple hours before the initial communication. Not only domain registry, but the creation of what were 3 accounts at the mortgage company as they're impersonating not only the primary closing officer or disbursement officer at the mortgage company, but those that were CC'd on it. Very good. This was a what I would call a professional job. This is a very, very good job. Yep. All right. Number one takeaway, Melissa, from that fraud, and then I want to move to the other. We try to hold to, we got about 10 to 12 minutes left. Number one takeaway from that return of mortgage lender proceeds fraud.
I think that in that particular case, be smart about the communication. Under no circumstances, leave an email or for someone to say, call me back so I can verify. Pay attention to the small details. An email back instead of a phone call, a restricted number on the line, what appears to be a suspicious person that you're having dialogue with. Just be cautious and don't, call back someone you know to a number you know. Period. End of story.
What I found interesting though, because I would argue that you followed best practice. You called a known number, you left a message, you sent an email not knowing that it was going to the fraudster, and then they called you back.
Well, but also too, the closer on the other side chose not to return the phone call from a known, if I would have received a phone call with the same number that I'd called and the person seemed familiar, because I did call her on Friday. I called her on Friday. She says, well, I got the message, but I responded via email.
Yeah.
I responded via email, and that email was intercepted by the fraudster. Hey, I got your email. Here's the address you're looking for. Give me a minute. I'll call you.
Yeah. All right. Well,
so just, the number one takeaway from that is pay attention to the smallest details. If something doesn't seem right, it's not. There's something wrong. Yeah. I think anyone who is in our industry, anyone who's in the position of dealing with wiring instructions or lenders is a bit higher level employee, and they should be able to interpret those red flags quickly and trust their instincts. If something seems a little off, don't risk it. Not even for $1, don't risk it, much less $225,000 or anything above that. No,
agreed. And my other takeaway is just, there's just simply no safe zone. So now we have an instance, this first instance I've seen on a request for lender funds to be returned. And they really do understand all the sweeps in and out on a transaction from a money movement perspective. All right, quickly, fraud to a lender. So the second fraud included $125,000 wire that was coming inbound from a lender, right? Is this a different lender or was this the same lender? Okay, totally different lender trying to send you mortgage funds. And
it was actually
$144,000.
And somehow someone attempted to, or did, unbeknownst to us, access our email, and there was an attorney's office involved. We in our local area deliver paper on closing packages. And when we do that, we print hard copy wiring instructions and deliver with the closing papers. We figure, they know they're getting the real docs from us, that our wiring instructions are legit, right?
Sure.
So we send them with the paper, deliver it, get it to the lender's office. An email was sent to that lender and the attorney's office. And it was, in fact, my closer's email. Now, whether or not there was something behind it, we don't know. But we show that there were attempts of access from outside foreign countries, but we show they were blocked. How that came about, we don't know. But ultimately, at the bank, it's a local bank, their real estate department received an email saying, disregard any previous wiring instructions and use these instead. And it wasn't our form. BB&T Bank, okay. Landtitle Texas was the beneficiary on the account. And the lender's processor in their real estate department did not question, did not call, did not verify, but rather just sent the money to the replacement wiring instructions with no hesitation.
And they have not recovered the funds. Where does
They have
that?
not. And ultimately it was their responsibility to fund that loan. So they had to resend the money a few days later.
Sure.
As I was mentioning earlier, I received a demand letter from their attorney on Friday demanding that we replace that I replaced their $144,000 because we were negligent in letting our email be hacked.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, okay, you guys are a bank. I mean, certainly you have processes and protocols in place for verifying instructions and can see when a replacement wiring instructions come in that would trigger someone to pick up the phone. You're calling someone who's in your same area code down the street, pick up the phone and call and verify. The attorney's office, who was the intermediary, could have been asked to verify. None of that was done. Instead, they just sent it and are trying to recover it. And based on what I understand and the demand letter made of me, they couldn't recover those funds.
Lessons learned on that, if anything. I tend to agree with your posture on that, in the sense that, well, what am I supposed to do? I don't have visibility to your practices and procedures leading up to a wire transfer. And we have to assume in this day and age that all emails have been compromised. You can't just simply take an email with wiring instructions and then just wire funds out. That's not the world we're living in right now. So any takeaways on that from you and your title agency? Or do you think this is more lessons learned? Certainly lessons learned on the bank side, without a doubt.
Well, and it's just another takeaway for me that I don't want to communicate wiring instructions via email, and why using certified is so important to us. But in that particular instance, as a title agency, it's important that the people that we're working with, and again, like you said, we have no control, but it's important that the people we're working with understand. And this one, again, it's hard to justify a lender not having their own protocols and procedures in place for verifying wiring instructions when they're a sophisticated party in a real estate transaction. This is their real estate department. Presumably that's what they do all day long. How do we prohibit that if, we send secure emails with everything and we do all of this, but the person on the other side is just ignorant to the process or just blatantly disregards procedures? We send every email with a disclaimer insurance requires. Hey, do not send any wires until you call a known contact to verify.
Yep.
We're not responsible for you sending money to the wrong place. It's in big red letters on every single email that comes out of our office. Does that make a difference? They don't read it. So, I mean, how do we prevent that? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how we can control the deficiencies of the parties on the outside.
Yeah, that's a fair call out. The third fraud, so we have 2 more to go in 10 minutes. So the third, well, about 5 minutes. Third fraud, buyer cash to close. Walk us through this one. So again, we're in the same 30-day period. I have an amount, was that 275? Do I have that right?
275, give or take.
Okay.
And of course, we don't know anything about this one. And this one we're dealing with, and we don't know how this happened. And we've had little to no dialogue since. But this transaction was in a strange place because we had sent out our initial title work with a receipted contract, all our disclaimers on that commitment, on that email. The commitment goes to the buyers, to the real estate agents, many of which have a Gmail, AOL, Hotmail, whatever it may be. And this transaction was just parked, not ready to close. We prepared no closing statements, sent out, have not had any further communication with the parties to prepare this for closing. So somewhere, somehow, someone sent an email with the same closer's email of the one we just discussed. This happened within a couple of days. Sent an email to the buyer and their realtor. Hey guys, you've got a closing coming up next week. You need to make sure that we have those funds a week in advance. It's important. Send them to us. We need to put them in an interest-bearing account, which we don't do in Texas. We need to put them in an interest-bearing account. We need them now. Here's the wiring instructions. Fast forward 2 days later. Hey, following up, if we don't get this wire by tomorrow, your transaction's at risk of being canceled. We need to have it. You need to make sure to send it to us. The realtor agent is on these emails with the buyer.
The actual realtor.
The actual realtor.
Yep.
We knew none of this was going on at all. None of this. Okay. Fast forward to Friday morning. This starts on a Monday. We get to the Friday. Friday morning, buyer goes to Wells Fargo Bank. They've printed these wiring instructions. Guess who the beneficiary is on the wiring instructions? ABC attorney in New York City.
Right.
Title company's name is nowhere.
Right.
Landtitle Texas is nowhere. Our reference number is nowhere. Some random person with an address in New York City and their account number, some random bank, which I don't even remember. But we didn't have any of this communication. So the buyer, and no closing statements, nothing. So all of this is happening behind the scenes for a whole week. Buyer goes to the bank, calls our office. We have a logged call, calls our office, and it's like a 30-second call, asked for their closer. She was in the restroom. She'd stepped out for the restroom. They didn't leave a message. Didn't say, can I speak to someone else? Didn't say, I'm calling to verify wiring instructions. It was just, hey, can I speak to her? I'm sorry, she stepped out for a moment. Can I take a message? No, thank you. Buyer calls their realtor. Hey, we're at the bank and we're trying to send this wire. And we call the title company, but she's not around. Oh, that's okay. I can verify it. I got the wiring instructions too. It's good. From the realtor. Okay.
Can't make it up, right?
I find out about this because I get a phone call from the broker of the realtor, irate. Your email's been hacked. You need to fix this. Your email's been hacked. I said, what are you talking about? So he sends me some correspondence, looks to be her email. And I open up the wiring instructions and I said, well, wait a minute. This isn't even us. Well, what do you mean? It's not us. That's not our company. I mean, this is to some, Joe Blow in New York City, Esquire. So then that's when, the broker then stopped. He says, oh, I didn't see that. I didn't see that. I'll call you back. Well, we never heard from any of them again. We got a release of earnest money that following Wednesday. The contract was terminated. We tried to reach out to the buyer to figure out what was going on and have had no dialogue. I'm hoping, knock on wood, that they were fortunate enough that their funds were not applied. But the reality is, in that instance, they did not follow the protocol. We didn't have a closing statement out. They voluntarily sent funds to someone that wasn't even pretending to be us.
But in fairness, it looked like it was coming from your closer, didn't it?
Exactly. It looked like it was coming from us, but we were asking you to send the money to a third party in New York City.
Got it.
And so that's the first one of that type that I've seen. So I can't tell you that I have no resolution for that one. I don't know what had happened. We just know that the contract terminated.
On the last one, and I want to be mindful of time, just in a couple minutes, the last one you went through was an EMD return. It was not a large amount. What was it, $1,000?
It was $1,000.
And what did that look like?
That was more of the same scenario of the first one, where we were communicating with a buyer, contract canceled. My closer was communicating with that buyer and received instructions back, a letter added to that buyer's Gmail account. That buyer had not continued to communicate via email. We had tried to call that buyer, did get a call back. This one though, this buyer happens to be a foreign person. The person who called back happened to appeared to have a foreign accent. The closer in this particular case reached out to the real estate agent and said, hey, I just got a weird call from someone who says they were this buyer and they had a strange accent. The realtor says, yeah, they do. He's foreign and, he does have an accent. So that was him. It wasn't. We sent $1,000. 3 weeks later, the real buyer starts calling the office saying, hey, I hadn't received that $1,000 yet. Weren't y'all going to send me a check? Closer says, a check? No, we sent you a wire. No, I never sent you wiring instructions. The funny thing with that one was the first time we tried to send it, the wire was rejected.
Wrong account or?
Wrong account. So the fraudster came back and said, just kidding, let me get you a new one. And oh, by the way, let me call you back just to verify those. Very brazen, right?
Yeah.
And they did. And one of the admins talked to them, goes to the closer says, yeah, that's the right guy. I checked with the realtor. She said that is her buyer. She can confirm. Well, there goes my $1,000. I had to send a check to the guy. So all in all, we were duped, guys. We were duped. And a lot of these, in hindsight, and again, I was not directly involved in any of these, but in hindsight, in hearing from my staff, I picked some things throughout the process that created some red flags for me. But the main thing is, don't ever take a call back, ever, unless it's somebody right. Unless you talk to them on the phone, their voice, you're going to ask about their kids. How was your vacation? Oh, I know you said your dog was sick last week. Is he doing better? Kind of thing. Unless you know who you're talking to, don't take a call back, ever. Because I think that in two of the instances where we had outgoing, if we wouldn't have taken that call back and insisted on making sure we made contact with our known person, those two could have been avoided.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the texture. One more question before we wrap up is, was there a common denominator of a real estate agent or brokerage or any of these on these transactions, or were there
No.
different parties on?
They were all different parties.
Yeah, I agree. I'm hearing a couple things on this, and I'm sure everybody else is. One, that there just isn't a vector that is a safe zone anymore. The second is, like I say, brazen, kinetic, whatever you want to call it, they'll pick up the phone to get $1,000 payment. I mean, that from probably clearly overseas. If you trace and route that call back, you probably switch it and try to mask it around, but they're probably calling from, they're calling from somewhere else. And
well, and I bet that the guy, the fraudster on the $1,000, he had no way to know it was only $1,000.
Probably not, right? Yeah.
He had no way to know.
Yeah.
Because it was a return of earnest money. He had no way to know. He just knew that he was talking to somebody about returning funds.
Yeah. Well, Melissa, I want to thank you guys. Thanks for the interaction for all of you that are attending. This is a fascinating discussion. Melissa, I'm glad you're still standing among.
I'm glad I am too for now.
Yeah, you're just taking fire after fire after fire, and it's just wow. I'm glad to be working with you as well.
Well, and I have to thank you and all the folks at Certified, because from Tyler's initial call and Nick, and I mean, everyone that's helped us out, and getting your program and process implemented in our company, and knowing that's going to give us a little bit of a safety net and a better process. That's certainly been very, very beneficial to me. So I thank you guys for your assistance in that. No,
as always, and thanks for the support and the confidence that you're putting in us. I mean, we'll have insights, unfortunately, where the door is going to continue to get knocked on all of us in the industry. It's a matter of, is it locked and welded, and move on to the next easy. All we can do is do our best to not let these criminals, which is effectively what they are, take us down. But I like the fact, I'll close with this, Melissa. I like the fact that as an owner, you have taken the experience and you have had the humility to look at your process and procedure and say something needs to change, and then you changed it. Absolutely. So that the next time that same iteration is going to be met with a process, procedure, a technology, something different that is going to mean the difference between them being successful and them not. So exactly. Yeah. And I think, and sharing these types of things in our industry, I think is important to help other folks in our industry, other business owners, be successful and keep our industry safe. Yeah, totally agree. Well, you're doing that, and I can't thank you enough for your time. Appreciate it. For those of you that are on, we'll sign off right now, and we'll see you next month. Melissa, stay safe. Thanks. Bye. Yeah.